Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is snapping a rubber band. By most estimates, over 1 billion are used every single day, and almost no one knows where they came from. Before 1845, there was no simple way to hold a bundle of papers together. You tied them with string, or you didn't bother. Merchants used wax seals. Clerks used ribbon. Lawyers literally tied their briefs with red tape, and every bundle had to be untied and retied by hand. Natural rubber had been known to Europeans since the 1500s, when Spanish explorers watched Aztec and Maya peoples bounce balls made from the sap of a tropical tree. That sap latex was unlike anything in Europe, springy, waterproof, almost alive. Indigenous peoples of Mesoamerica had used it for centuries, for balls, for waterproofing, for ritual. By the 1700s, rubber had reached European laboratories. Scientists found it could rub pencil marks off paper, which is exactly how it earned the name rubber. But natural rubber had a fatal flaw. In summer heat, it turned sticky and reeked. In winter cold, it cracked apart. As a commercial product, it was nearly useless. Into this problem walked Charles Goodyear, a Connecticut hardware dealer with no scientific training, enormous debts, and an obsession that would consume his entire life. Goodyear was certain rubber could be tamed. He experimented in his kitchen, in debtor's prison, anywhere he could find space, spending years in poverty chasing a solution. Then in 1839, the story goes, he dropped a mixture of rubber and sulfur onto a hot stove. Instead of melting, it charred. When he peeled it off, it was still elastic. He held it against a cold window pane. It didn't stiffen. He left it in summer heat. It didn't melt. He had stumbled onto something the world had never seen. Goodyear named the process after Vulcan, the Roman god of fire. Vulcanization locked the rubber's molecules together, making the material stable across a wide range of temperatures. He patented the process in the United States in 1844. But in Britain, a rival named Thomas Hancock had reverse-engineered Goodyear's samples and secured a British patent months earlier. Despite his world-changing discovery, Goodyear died in 1860 deeply in debt. His name lives on through a tire company founded after his death, one he had no connection to whatsoever. But someone had been watching vulcanization closely. In London, a rubber goods manufacturer named Stephen Perry saw the newly stable material and asked a simple question: what if you bent it into a loop? On the 17th of March, 1845, Perry and his firm, Messrs. Perry & Co., received British Patent 10,551, rubber bands to hold papers and envelopes together. The patent described something almost embarrassingly simple: a loop of vulcanized rubber. No moving parts, no assembly required. One piece of elastic, bent into a circle. Perry's genius wasn't invention, it was application. He saw not boots or tubing, but an infinitely reusable fastener for the paper-choked offices of Victorian England. Victorian offices ran entirely on paper. Ledgers, letters, contracts, receipts, all piled and bundled. A rubber loop that held without knotting was revolutionary to a clerk drowning in ribbon. Adoption was gradual. Rubber was still exotic, and cautious Victorian businesses were slow to swap the string and wax seals that had served them for generations. But the telegraph accelerated commerce. More correspondence meant more bundled paper, and rubber bands began appearing in post offices and counting houses across Britain. The rubber band crossed the Atlantic through the latter half of the 1800s, as American rubber manufacturing expanded and prices fell within reach of ordinary businesses. By the early 1900s, American factories were producing rubber bands at industrial scale, and companies like Alliance Rubber in Alliance, Ohio, would eventually supply millions of offices nationwide. Making a rubber band is surprisingly graceful. A long tube of vulcanized rubber is sliced crosswise, like a sausage. Each thin slice becomes one band. The rubber itself is a compound of latex, sulfur, and processing agents, mixed, heated, and extruded into tube form before the cutting begins. A single modern factory can produce millions of bands per day. They are so inexpensive that a pound of them costs roughly the same as a cup of coffee. The British Royal Mail became one of the largest rubber band consumers in history. The service reportedly used tens of millions per year just to bundle mail for delivery. Somewhere along the way, the rubber band migrated from the bundle to the wrist. People wore them as reminders and fidgets, a long way from Perry's filing cabinet solution. In 2014, weaving kits called Rainbow Loom triggered one of the most unexpected toy crazes in decades. Tiny rubber bands woven into bracelets, with hundreds of millions of units sold worldwide. During World War II, natural rubber grew so scarce that the United States government urged citizens to conserve it. Rubber bands were rationed alongside nylon and metal. The war accelerated synthetic rubber development, which now makes up the majority of rubber in band production. Most bands today are petroleum-derived, not tapped from any tree. The original source, Hevea brasiliensis, still grows across Southeast Asia, where plantations in Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia supply natural latex for specialty uses. That dominance traces to a deliberate act of colonial botany. The British smuggled rubber seeds from Brazil in the 1870s, germinated them at Kew Gardens, and replanted them across the empire. Today, the global rubber band market is worth, by some estimates, several $100 million a year, a vast industry built on a loop of elastic costing, a fraction of a cent. The rubber band joined the paperclip, the staple, and the tape dispenser as one of the unsung lords of the office supply drawer. So common it became invisible. Scientists use them to bundle electrodes. Surgeons use surgical variants to tie off tissue. Guitarists wrap them around headstocks. Chefs loop them on pastry bags. The rubber band found work everywhere. Even in orbit, NASA has documented rubber bands aboard the International Space Station, bundling cables and securing gear in a place where a loose wire is a genuine safety hazard. Here is the remarkable thing. Across nearly 200 years of engineering progress, no one has invented a substantially better way to bundle small objects quickly and cheaply. The rubber band simply won. It all traces to a clumsy moment in a Connecticut kitchen. A man, a hot stove, a smear of sulfur and rubber that shouldn't have worked, but did. And to a London manufacturer who looked at the result and thought, loop, just a loop. The most enduring inventions often seem, in retrospect, completely obvious. The rubber band is so simple it is almost offensive, which is precisely why it has lasted nearly 200 years. By some widely cited estimates, roughly 1.4 trillion rubber bands have been produced since Perry's patent. Stacked flat, that number would circle the Earth many times over. Every child who has ever launched one across a room is part of a tradition stretching back to 1845, powered by an accident from 6 years before that. Open a box of rubber bands today, and what you find is functionally identical to Perry's patent. Same principle, same loop. The world changed around it, the band did not. That is the real origin story, not of a rubber band, but of an idea so perfectly suited to the world that it stopped needing to evolve. No museum exhibit, no Nobel Prize, no Hollywood biopic. The rubber band just kept holding things together, one quiet snap at a time. This is Origins. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. There's a new origin every single morning.